Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister. I'd like to ask you your views on Sudan and what's happening there, and also about the involvement of the Wagner Group with the Rapid Support Forces. We asked Hamiti, the leader of this group, about the involvement of Wagner with him and his forces, and he did not deny it. And just a last question, to whom are they accountable, this group? Is it to the Russian government, to another body? Who are they accountable to? Thank you.
Well, with respect to Wagner, this is a private military company. We repeatedly touched upon this issue, including in this room a few years ago. Our French colleagues, heads of diplomacy in the European Union through Joseph Borrell, issued grievances towards us vis-a-vis our links to Mali, Central African Republic, and they created some kind of a mini scandal with respect to the fact that the government of Mali, under circumstances when the French began to withdraw their operations from the country and began to close their military bases in the south where the main terrorist threats remained, and the government of Mali, in order not to be left without defenses, they turned to the services of a private military company called Wagner. That is their right. This is something which the Malian foreign minister announced during a General Assembly meeting, and nobody has made this any secret. Both the Central African Republic and Mali, as well as Sudan, and a number of other countries whose governments, whose legitimate authorities turn for such services, they have the right to do so. And let's not forget, if you are concerned about this issue, take a look at the internet. Take a look at the number of private military companies which exist in the United States. They exist in Britain and in France. There are dozens of them. And many of them have, for many years, worked directly on our borders, including inside Ukraine. And this also gives rise to significant questions. Now, with respect to what's happening in Sudan, I think that certainly this is a tragedy. People are dying. There are threats to diplomats. And they are significant threats. We are aware of this. We are following the situation. Today, representatives of UNICEF have requested our embassy to somehow host and accommodate their staff because of the fact that they are not in a safe location. I'm not certain how this can be done, but we will tackle the situation. Let us recall the developments with Sudanese statehood first in the singular, and then Sudan and South Sudan. And this was all transpiring before our very eyes when our U.S. colleagues made one of their foreign policy priorities the division of Sudan into two parts. They turned to us for the then President Omar al-Bashir, for us to persuade Mr. Bashir to reach an agreement for the conduct of free elections on voluntary separation and division. And we, frankly speaking, thought that the Sudanese people, the peoples, should make that decision. And ultimately, the division took place. It was separated into two parts. A South Sudan was created, and the Americans, as the initiators of this divorce, so to speak, should have done everything possible to help these new two states coexist, to develop their economies, to provide for the welfare of their citizens. But the Americans didn't like something. I won't delve into the details, but they imposed sanctions both against the leadership of Sudan and against the leadership of South Sudan. And subsequently, there were constant demands being put forward through the IMF, International Monetary Fund, and so on. So this is a form of geopolitical engineering, and it doesn't bring about any positive results. I would propose that the main conclusion be drawn from this crisis. Let's not interfere in Africans' negotiations amongst themselves. Let's not seek to resolve our own African issues, and let's not add any demands from abroad which fail to reflect the interests of those countries. African solutions to African problems.